Hi, Aubrey. I chose to respond to your post with an opposing viewpoint. I do not believe that the United States should impose an assault weapons ban. Addressing a couple of points you made in your post. First, you mentioned that the NRA profits and is profiting from assault weapons sales. Just to clarify, the NRA is a private organization. They don't profit from gun sales, they profit from memberships. People choose to donate to the organization and to donate to become members of the organization, and that's how they make their profits. With those profits and the donation income that they make, they lobby at state and local levels for gun rights, and they file lawsuits on behalf of gun owners against what laws that they deem are unconstitutional. So the NRA isn't profiting off of gun sales. Second, when you were talking about the assault weapons ban in the 1990s, you mentioned that there were what you called loopholes for existing guns that were grandfathered in. When you said loopholes, I assume that you meant that that was a part of the legislation. I'm curious what your solution would be to that in your new proposed legislation. There are over 20 million assault rifles in circulation and owned in the United States. What would be your solution to what would you do with those guns? The way that a lot of people who are advocating for assault weapons bans make it seem as though the second that this new law is enacted, all of the guns will disappear. And that's impossible, and that's not true. You mentioned a gun buyback program similar to what is put in place in Canada. What happens if, and I assume most owners will not want to sell their guns to the government? What happens then? Do you collect them? Do you not collect them? Do you leave them in circulation? If you do leave them in circulation, how does that address gun violence with guns that are already out there? Moreover, and I haven't heard anybody address this, ghost guns. Ghost guns are a huge thing today, especially amongst those who commit crime. Ghost guns are guns that are made at home. They're unregistered and they're without serial numbers, and they can be 3D printed using polymer. These guns come in all shapes, sizes, from pistols to assault rifles. And making and possessing one of those would bypass all legislation and all rules that are already established or that could be established. So by enacting an assault weapons ban, all that would do is promote ghost gun manufacturing for criminals and for owners who now have no access to guns legally. Lastly, I want to address your comparison to you mentioned that the Constitution is not open for interpretation, or that it is open for interpretation, which I take issue with at the beginning. I think that's a huge leap to say that the Constitution is now open to interpretation and can be adapted with pop culture's views at any given time. But you had compared muskets when the Second Amendment was drafted, that there were muskets, not AR-15s. One of the elements of the Second Amendment is to protect, like you say, implement a well-regulated militia, not only for self-defense, but also to protect the people from an oppressive government. At the time, the government was armed with muskets, as you said. Therefore, the musket was the equivalent of today's AR-15. The private citizens were armed with the same weapons that the government was armed with. Thanks to technology, today that is AR-15s. So by limiting the public to musket-style guns or less capable firearms in the government, that defeats that entire element of the Second Amendment, which is to arm the public for self-defense, but also as a safety net to prevent an oppressive government. I see where you're going with this, and I do agree that things do need to be done to address gun violence. However, I think that your argument may fall short when taking a big picture approach to what the ramifications would truly be, and what the effectiveness of an assault weapons ban would look like. Thank you. Have a good one.